Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the brilliant mind of YouTuber and entrepreneur Alexa Saranoja to unpack a really fascinating psychological framework. We're looking at exactly why we so often hit these invisible ceilings in our own potential. And listen, this isn't about simple time management or, learning some new technical skill. We're talking about something way deeper here. We're talking about your identity and how it literally governs what you're capable of achieving. This touches pretty much all of us, especially when we're trying to push into that next level of our career or our personal life. So buckle up because we are going to dismantle some deeply ingrained beliefs today. I want to kick things off by challenging a really common assumption that most of us just kind of accept as fact. We often think that self-sabotage is just a lack of discipline, right? Or maybe we just have terrible time management. We tell ourselves, man, if I just tried a little harder, if I was just more consistent, I wouldn't be stuck. But according to Alexa's framework, the reality is entirely different. Self-sabotage isn't a work ethic problem at all. It's a full-blown clash of identities. It's exactly what happens when the person you are desperately trying to become collides head-on with the person you've been conditioned to be your entire life.
And what's truly fascinating here is how this totally reframes our daily struggles. We are quite literally holding ourselves back because we're clinging to these outdated survival mechanisms. Think about it for a second. Maybe you grew up having to be the strong one, the person who never cries, who constantly solves everyone else's problems, and who absolutely never asks for help because showing vulnerability just wasn't a safe option for you back then. That identity protected you. It got you through some really hard times. But now, that exact same defense mechanism has become your ceiling. It is no longer a shield protecting you, it's a cage that's actively preventing you from expanding.
Okay, so this brings us right to the first major psychological trap we fall into, which is the false belief that we can successfully compartmentalize our identities. We naively think, oh, I can be one person in the workplace, and then I'll just be a completely different person behind closed doors at home. But the underlying philosophy here is radical yet crystal clear. How you do one thing is how you do everything. The idea that you can just magically split your professional self from your private self is a total illusion. At the end of the day, you only have one nervous system. And trust me, it registers every single contradiction. There's this brilliant little anecdote from the source material that just perfectly illustrates this. Imagine a fearless leader. She's capable of making these bold decisions in business, leading massive teams and closing huge contracts without even batting an eye. That's her professional facade. Yet that exact same woman, coming home with a high fever, was absolutely terrified of simply asking her husband to take the kids to school. It's a massive disconnect, isn't it? In business, she was this unshakable alpha, but at home, she was overfunctioning, completely exhausted, and totally trapped in the identity of the woman who just has to do everything herself. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that shrinking at home, or really in any private area of your life, is inevitably going to leak into and cap your professional ambition. You simply cannot be the master of your destiny in the office while abandoning yourself or your boundaries at the kitchen table. Your nervous system registers that discrepancy as major instability. If you're completely incapable of receiving support in your personal life, sooner or later, you're going to drain your energy and create a glass ceiling right over your income and your leadership potential. Your identity has to be integrated.
Now, the moment you realize this and decide, okay, I'm going to break that old identity to evolve, well, you don't immediately step into some paradise of peace and success. Instead, you enter what is famously called the messy middle. And look, this is not a failure. It's not a sign you've made a terrible mistake. It is a necessary psychological crisis. It's that weird period where the old identity is crumbling down, but the new one hasn't fully solidified yet. It is a time of pure transition. It's messy, it's often frightening, but it is absolutely fundamental for anyone who actually wants to level up.
And this transition actually unfolds in 7 very distinct phases. It kicks off with threshold energy. Your heart says go, but your ego and mind are totally resisting. Then comes doubt, where you basically second-guess your intelligence and your capabilities. Phase 3 is chaos, and interestingly, just when you try to change, your external life explodes. Your car breaks down, clients vanish out of nowhere, relationships get strained. It really feels like the universe is testing you. Which leads right into phase 4, this unexplainable, bone-tired physical fatigue, like you just ran a marathon. But if you survive that, you reach recalibration, where silence becomes an absolute necessity. That's followed by clarity, where your next steps suddenly seem obvious. And finally, the restart. You've reached the new level, ready to eventually start the whole crazy cycle all over again.
Listen, it is vital to truly understand those middle phases of the journey. When you suddenly feel tired down to your very bones, when you feel this compelling, undeniable urge to isolate yourself and just sit in silence, you are not being weak and you're definitely not being lazy. You are undergoing a profound recalibration. Your nervous system, which has been accustomed to decades of old patterns, is literally downloading a brand new operating system and deleting the old software to make room for your new reality. That silence? It isn't emptiness. It's the critical downtime required to actually align with your new identity.
So after navigating the chaotic storms of the messy middle, we enter a really critical phase of reconstruction and stabilization. This is the point where we stop fighting for success and start completely redefining how our mind and body actually handle it. Because honestly, hitting a big goal isn't enough. You have to be able to stay there without completely short-circuiting.
Now, this is undoubtedly one of the most profound insights from our source material today. Just imagine this scenario. Let's say you finally start making $20,000 a month. Amazing, right? But if your internal baseline, your deep-seated financial identity, is still set to your old $4,000 a month salary, what do you think happens? Your nervous system completely sounds the alarm. It won't interpret that abundance as a success. It will view it as a dangerous, terrifying anomaly. So you will unconsciously brace for the collapse. You don't rise to the income you desire. You stabilize exactly where your nervous system feels safe. You'll self-sabotage right back down to those $4,000 because paradoxically, that is the number where your brain feels secure.
To actually expand your capacity to hold success without that inevitable collapse, you need to make 3 key shifts. First, integrate your personal power. You have got to start asserting your needs and demanding support right there at the kitchen table. Second, upgrade your environment. If the people around you are making you feel guilty for your ambition, your potential is going to suffocate. You literally must place yourself in rooms where your massive goals are considered completely, boringly normal. And third, learn to receive. Consciously practice letting success, money, and even compliments in, without contracting and without constantly expecting it all to disappear the very next day.
But remember, your identity doesn't change with one grand dramatic announcement. It changes through daily repetition. You have to ask yourself every single day, how would the future successful version of me act in this exact situation? And then, and this is the crucial part, you have to practically do it. Whether that means spending money without fear, finally asking for some help, or just taking a necessary break. By building this familiarity with your new identity, you send a super powerful signal of safety to your brain. And safety ultimately is what permanently stabilizes your new level of life.
I really want to leave you with this final thought to reflect on today. Take a hard look at the invisible ceilings in your own life. Instead of obsessing over some new external strategy or tactic, ask yourself this: which outdated identity, which old dusty survival mechanism do you finally need to leave behind to let your next level actually emerge? Think about it. The answers might just surprise you.
You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's a certain comfort in the precision of it all.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you fall down, your arm hurts, and the x-ray shows this jagged white line across the bone. And the doctor just points at this screen and says, well, there it is.
Right. It's visible. You can categorize it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But when you step into the world of, human potential, when you're making, say, $20,000 a month, your business is booming and everything looks structurally sound on paper, but you still feel completely paralyzed to take the next step. I mean, there's no x-ray for that.
No, there isn't.
The machine is broken, but we're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely invisible. And today, we are tearing apart the work of business mentor and YouTuber Alexis Saranodia to find out exactly why we build our own hidden glass ceilings.
It really is the ultimate psychological paradox, isn't it? Like, why do we consistently self-sabotage just as we reach the precipice of a new level of success?
Right.
And Alexa brings this totally fascinating perspective to this because she actually built a massive following teaching very tactical YouTube strategy. Algorithms, thumbnails, retention rates.
But we are completely throwing all of that out today, right?
We are. We are ignoring the how-to entirely. We want to look at the underlying architecture of success, which she argues is purely about identity transformation.
I love that.
Yeah. Her core thesis is that most of us are walking around living in identities that were constructed for previous, totally outdated levels of our lives.
We're essentially wearing psychological armor for a war that ended like 5 years ago.
Exactly. And it is heavy.
It's so heavy. Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you are listening to this right now and you have hit a wall where you possess the tools and you know the strategy, but something inside you just aggressively stalls when it's time to execute well, you're going to want to hear this.
Oh, definitely.
This conversation is custom tailored for you. Whether you're trying to scale a business or improve a relationship, we're going to deconstruct the friction between who you are and who you're trying to become. And we're going to break this journey down into 3 distinct pillars.
Right. So we'll start with the danger of the split identity. Then we'll get into the mechanics of raising your emotional baseline. And finally, we'll navigate the very chaotic 7-phase cycle of the messy middle.
Yeah, that messy middle is going to be a ride. But a lot of that friction, it starts with what Alexa calls the split identity, which kind of stems from that old cliche, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Which, I mean, that often gets tossed around as just motivational fluff on the internet.
Yeah, totally.
But she actually anchors it in a very painful biological reality.
Yeah.
Because you cannot be a powerful boundary-setting force in your public life or your business while simultaneously shrinking and, over-functioning in your private relationship.
It just doesn't work.
The nervous system does not work that way. It's incredibly smart, and it constantly monitors for congruency.
Right.
So when you ask your brain to run 2 completely opposing operating systems, like the fearless leader in public and the voiceless martyr in private, you create an unsustainable physiological contradiction.
Let's ground this in the story she shares, because this really illustrates the contradiction perfectly. So Alexa is aggressively scaling her business, right? She's hitting these massive financial milestones, demanding high prices, and acting as this absolute powerhouse for her clients.
On the internet, she is a titan.
A titan. But then she gets sick. She's at home running this multi-6-figure empire, but she has a really high fever. And she describes feeling this immense crushing guilt at the mere thought of asking her husband, whom she refers to as the Viking, by the way.
Right, the Viking.
Yeah, she feels guilty asking the Viking to just take their 3 kids to school. I mean, she is literally burning up, and she cannot bring herself to ask for basic support in her own living room.
And that's because asking for help required her to dismantle an identity that had kept her feeling safe her entire life.
Wow.
She actually details how she modeled this behavior after her mother. It was this idea of never complaining, never being a burden, just sort of enduring in silence.
Pushing through it.
Exactly. And we see this constantly in high achievers. They adopt this low-maintenance identity, like, I don't need anything, I'm fine, I'll carry it all.
Right, right.
But we have to recognize that this is rarely an innate personality trait. It is an outdated survival mechanism. It's a trauma response designed to prove your worth through pure utility. If you can't ask for help at the kitchen table, you cannot expand your capacity to receive success in business, because you will inevitably burn out trying to carry the empire completely alone.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about core self-worth, but just practically speaking, how does someone differentiate between just being a, low-maintenance partner and actually abandoning their self-worth?
That's a great question.
Because isn't it, completely normal to compartmentalize? Don't CEOs act entirely differently in a hostile boardroom takeover than they do when they're sitting on the living room rug playing with their toddlers? We all wear different hats, so why is this specific split so inherently destructive?
Well, that is the crucial distinction between changing roles and compromising your core baseline of worth.
Oh.
Because changing roles is adaptive, and it's necessary. In the boardroom, the CEO uses assertive, dominant behavior, right? On the rug with the toddler, the CEO uses gentle, nurturing behavior.
Right, totally different vibes.
Exactly. But in both of those scenarios, the internal belief system remains intact. The CEO believes they have a right to exist, a right to express their needs, and a right to be respected.
I see.
Alexa wasn't just changing roles, she was abandoning her worth at the front door. She believed she deserved compensation and respect from her clients, but subconsciously believed she didn't deserve rest or support from her own partner unless she, earned it through suffering.
Okay, so the underlying worth wasn't constant. It's like trying to put a Ferrari engine into a car, but leaving the parking brake on.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. The engine, which is your business ambition, your drive, is absolutely roaring. It is ready to go 200 miles an hour. But the brake, your personal life boundaries, your inability to receive help, is fully engaged.
Yep.
If you just press the gas harder, you aren't going to win the race. You're just going to burn the transmission, melt the tires, and destroy the entire system.
Yeah.
Because the friction destroys the machine.
And that mechanical translation perfectly mirrors the neurobiology of burnout. Your body knows that if your business gets any bigger, if you get any more successful, it is going to crush you.
Wow.
Why? Because you haven't developed the capacity to delegate or to ask for help. So your subconscious essentially calculates the trajectory and says, look, if we keep growing at this rate and we still refuse to ask for help when we have a fever, we are going to die.
So it pulls the emergency brake.
It creates a subconscious glass ceiling.
Which means The bottleneck of her entire business wasn't her marketing strategy or her funnel or the YouTube algorithm. The bottleneck was the kitchen table.
Exactly.
It was the uncomfortable conversation of saying, I am sick, I need you to take the kids. That was terrifying for her in a way that raising her coaching prices by thousands of dollars wasn't. Because raising prices is just a business strategy. Asking for help is an identity crisis.
It really is. And that leads directly to the next logical question, which is, if we accept that this split identity is acting as an invisible parking brake, what happens when we try to force the gas pedal anyway?
Right. Does the brain just let us win, or does it fight back?
Oh, it fights back. It fights back violently.
Yeah, and this is where the conversation really shifts from just identifying the problem to understanding the mechanics of how we actually fix it.
Yeah.
Because getting to a new level of success is only half the battle.
Right.
Staying there without burning it to the ground is the real war. And in the sources, Alexa references Gay Hendricks' concept of the upper limit problem, which I just think is one of the most profound psychological frameworks for understanding self-sabotage.
It is. It fundamentally changes how you view your own failures.
Yeah.
So the upper limit problem suggests that we all have an internal success thermostat. We have this deeply subconscious, pre-programmed setting for how much love, how much wealth, or how much happiness we believe we are entitled to experience.
It's our baseline.
It's our baseline, yeah.
So wait, chemically, what is actually happening when we exceed that thermostat? Let's say I finally have a really great, peaceful weekend with my partner, and suddenly I find myself picking a massive fight over the dishes on Sunday night. What is actually happening in my brain there?
Well, your amygdala is treating the unfamiliar happiness as a literal threat.
A threat. Really?
Yes. When you exceed your internal setting, your nervous system experiences a spike in anxiety because it has ventured into unknown territory. And the brain prefers familiar misery over unfamiliar happiness.
Wow.
Because familiar misery is predictable, and predictable means survivable. So when the happiness or the money gets too high, your subconscious triggers behaviors like picking a fight or procrastinating on a big project or literally physically getting sick.
Just to spike your cortisol.
Exactly, to spike your cortisol and bring your reality back down to the familiar, chaotic baseline where it actually knows how to operate.
That is wild, but it completely explains what was happening to Alexa. I mean, she was making $20,000 a month, but mentally she was halfway in and halfway out.
Right, she wasn't fully accepting it.
No, she wasn't accepting the revenue at all. Subconsciously, she was bracing for a collapse, expecting to return to her old reality where she only made $4,000 a month. She literally ignored the money coming in. She refused to even look at her bank accounts.
Because acknowledging the money would require her to accept that her reality had fundamentally changed. And that would mean stepping into a new identity.
Which is terrifying.
Right. She was trying to sustain a $20,000 reality with a $4,000 nervous system, and that is biologically unsustainable.
Right.
To fix this, you cannot just push harder. You have to actively stretch your capacity to receive, which requires exposing the hidden biases in your current identity.
And the sources detail this incredibly revealing exercise given to her by her mentor, Lena Lutonska.
Yeah.
It is the Give, Grow, Gain framework. And honestly, it exposes so much about how we mask our limitations as virtues.
Oh, it really does. So the exercise asks you to categorize your ambitions, right?
Yeah.
And Lexa found that she had absolutely no problem with the giving category. She wanted to give her time, her value, and her money to her kids, her husband, and her clients. Giving felt completely safe because it just reinforced her identity as the provider, the martyr.
And the growing category was super easy for her too. Investing in business books, buying courses, learning new skills, that felt productive. But then came the third category, gain.
Yeah.
When asked to write down what she wanted to receive purely for herself, not for the business, not to make her a better mother, just for her, her mind went entirely blank. She just hid behind the old identity of, I'm fine, I don't need much.
Which brings us to a moment in the sources that I think just perfectly bridges this abstract psychology with the real world. Her mentor challenges her to go spend the money she is making on herself. Just go to the mall and buy something for Alexa.
Oh, the pants story.
Yes, the pants story.
She goes to the mall and she forces herself to buy a single pair of pants, just pants. But her internal reaction is completely disproportionate to the event. She buys them, gets in her car, and calls her husband terrified, but also weirdly electrified, almost like she just robbed a bank or something.
Right.
She opens this absolute Pandora's box of fear, thinking, what if I become materialistic? What if I like this too much? What if I become a greedy person?
And this reaction, it highlights something critical about how society conditions us, particularly anyone raised to be a caretaker. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that we moralize our limitations.
We do.
We convince ourselves that staying small and denying our desires makes us humble or righteous or morally superior somehow. We equate self-denial with goodness. I don't need anything, therefore I am a good person.
But the mentor, Lena, hits her with a reality check that just completely shatters that illusion. She asks Alexa, would you ever want to teach your clients or your children to give endlessly, to constantly put everyone else first, and to never, ever receive?
It is a devastating question because the answer is instantly obvious.
Yeah, of course not.
You would never wish a life of constant depletion on someone you love, so why are you modeling it? By playing small and pretending you don't have desires, you are not being humble. You are modeling limitation. You are actively teaching the people around you that it is unsafe to want things, that receiving is selfish.
That shifts the perspective entirely. It moves the framing from wanting things as selfish to shrinking yourself as a disservice to the people looking up to you.
Exactly.
But knowing that logically doesn't just instantly rewire the brain. I mean, she could just buy the pants and suddenly be cured of her upper limit problem. How did she actually stabilize this new baseline?
So she utilized a psychological tool that relies on action preceding belief. We have this huge misconception that we need to feel confident before we take a bold step, that our mindset has to be absolutely perfect before we act.
All right, like we have to read 10 more books first.
Exactly. But the sources argue the exact opposite. You have to practice the identity of the person you are becoming before you feel ready. Success isn't chased, it's stabilized.
She started asking herself daily, how does the woman who earns $250,000 a year think?
Yes. When she faced a business problem, she wouldn't react as the old Alexa who was terrified of losing money. She asked, how does the $250,000 woman price her work? How does she handle a slow week where sales are down? Does she panic and drop her prices, or does she rest and trust her value?
So she had to literally act out the behaviors of her future self until her nervous system caught up.
That's it.
It's essentially exposure therapy for success.
That is precisely what it is. You are exposing your nervous system to a higher frequency of success, to higher standards, and to better boundaries until it just stops treating those things as anomalies or threats. Familiarity builds safety, and safety builds consistency.
But you can't just do that in a vacuum, right? You can't sit in a dark room, white-knuckling your way into a new identity while everyone around you is dragging you back to the old one.
No, you can't.
And this brings up the concept of the informational environment, which I found totally fascinating. Alexa points out that if you want to normalize a new baseline, you have to audit the people and the information you are marinating in.
Because your environment dictates your perception of normal. If you're surrounded by people who constantly complain about how hard it is to make money, or who, subtly shame people for being ambitious, your nervous system learns that ambition equals social exile.
Right.
It learns that staying small is the only way to belong to the tribe. And evolutionarily, humans are terrified of being exiled from the tribe.
She gives this phenomenal example of this. She was talking to another mentor of hers, Harut, and she confesses very nervously that she wants to make $1 million.
Yeah.
Now, if you say that to the average person at a dinner party, they might look at you like you are delusional or greedy or just completely out of touch.
Yeah.
But she says it to Harut, and his response is just a casual deadpan, okay, let's do it.
And that casualness is the magic ingredient. When a massive, terrifying goal is met with a complete lack of drama, it removes the shame. It signals to the subconscious that this level of success is not crazy, it is just the next logical step. It completely recalibrates the brain's understanding of what is possible.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This ties into a profound argument Alexa makes about how we interpret our own wants. Because we are culturally conditioned to view desire as a void, like a sign that we are ungrateful for what we currently have. It's framed as a character flaw. But she flips that entirely. She argues that desire is actually information.
It is a phenomenal reframe. Desire is not proof that you are broken or greedy. Desire is a compass. It is pointing toward your next evolutionary step.
Yes.
If you feel a deep desire for a bigger business, a healthier relationship, or just more peace, it is because your subconscious is recognizing that you have developed the capacity to handle it. When you stop moralizing desire and start viewing it as data, you remove the guilt from growth.
So we've released the parking brake by fixing the split identity. We're raising our baseline by auditing our environment and acting as our future selves. We are treating desire as a compass. Logically, we have the map.
Right, the theory is solid.
But what does the actual day-to-day transition look like? Because this is where I think most people completely derail. We read the self-help books, we get fired up, we know exactly what to do, but then we actually start, and it feels absolutely terrible.
It feels chaotic. It feels like you are doing everything wrong.
Yes. It does not feel like an inspiring movie montage with an upbeat soundtrack. It feels like a relentless, exhausting identity crisis.
It really does.
According to the sources, the path from who you are to who you want to be is heavily structured, but it is deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Alexa maps this out as the 7 phases of the messy middle, and we need to spend some serious time unpacking each of these phases, because if you don't understand the mechanisms of what is happening to you, you will quit at phase 2, just believing that the discomfort is a sign you should stop.
When in reality, the discomfort is biological proof that you are doing it exactly right. The brain is resisting the change because the change requires energy. So let's map the psychology and physiology of each phase, starting with phase 1, threshold energy.
Okay, phase 1. This is the moment right before you jump. It's the physical sensation before you commit to the new goal. It's the butterflies in your stomach, but like amplified.
Right.
It's that friction in your chest.
Yeah.
Your heart is ready to leap, but your mind is screaming in terror. You feel like you are standing on the very edge of a cliff.
And what you are experiencing there is a massive activation of the sympathetic nervous system. The mind, the ego, wants safety above all else. Its primary directive is to keep you alive, and it does that by keeping you in familiar patterns.
Right, familiar is safe.
Exactly. When you decide to break a pattern, the ego perceives it as a life or death threat. It releases adrenaline and cortisol to make you physically uncomfortable, hoping you will just step back from the edge. But simultaneously, your body is vibrating with the readiness to expand.
It's that hyper-aware feeling when you're hovering your mouse over the publish button on a really vulnerable post, or the send button on your resignation letter.
Yes.
You push the button, you jump, you cross the threshold, and almost instantly you slam into phase 2.
Phase 2, doubt. This is the immediate aftermath of the jump. The initial rush of adrenaline fades, the dopamine drops, and the ego stages a massive, calculated counterattack. You start second-guessing every variable. Who am I to do this? I am not qualified. This was a massive mistake.
This is where imposter syndrome really takes the wheel.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always look like sitting in a corner crying, right?
No, not at all.
Alexa points out that it often manifests dangerously as shiny object syndrome. Can you explain the neurobiology of why we suddenly want to change our entire strategy the minute things get hard?
Oh, shiny object syndrome is a brilliant subconscious defense mechanism. Because you are in the discomfort of doubt, your brain frantically searches for a different map, one that promises an easier route. You think, maybe my niche is wrong. Let me buy another course. Let me rethink the whole business model. The ego tries to derail you by making you constantly start over. If you are always in the planning phase, you never actually have to face the vulnerability of executing the original path. It is a way to feel productive while completely avoiding the work that actually requires identity transformation.
Wow. So shiny object syndrome isn't just a lack of focus or a short attention span.
Yeah.
It is your brain actively protecting you from the threat of growth.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's say you recognize that. You push through the doubt, you refuse to buy the new course, you stay the original path, then you arrive at phase 3. And I think this is the one that breaks most people. Phase 3. Chaos.
The universe's tests.
It literally feels like a cosmic joke. It is the exact moment you finally commit, you lock in your focus, and suddenly everything in your external environment completely breaks down. The kids get a stomach bug, the car transmission blows up, your biggest client suddenly sends an email saying they're leaving, a water pipe bursts in your kitchen.
It feels like the universe is actively punishing you for trying to improve your life. And from a psychological standpoint, sure, there is a degree of confirmation bias. Here you are hypervigilant, so you notice the chaos more.
Right.
But Alexa frames this phase as a profound test of prioritization. This isn't sabotage. It's a test of prioritization. It is the friction of realignment.
It's a test of how badly you want to hold on to the new identity when the old identity is offering you a really easy out.
Yes. When the car breaks down and the kids are sick, the subconscious is basically asking, will you retreat to the old version of you when it becomes incredibly inconvenient to maintain the new version?
Wow.
Do you abandon the business goal, fall back on the couch and say, see, I knew the universe didn't want me to have this. I knew I couldn't handle it. Or do you figure out how to navigate the chaos while stubbornly holding on to your new standards? It is an initiation by fire. If you retreat, you confirm to your brain that the old identity is the only safe one. If you push through, you prove that the new identity is viable.
It's the universe, or your own psychology, asking, are you sure? Are you really willing to pay the price of admission for this new life?
Exactly.
Okay, so you survive the chaos, the car is fixed, the clients are managed, the kids are back in school. You think you've won. But then we hit phase 4, which in some ways feels even worse because it is so internal. Phase 4, extreme exhaustion.
It is a bone-deep tiredness that makes absolutely no logical sense. You haven't run a marathon. You haven't been doing intense manual labor. You might have just been sitting at your laptop for 4 hours, but you feel like you've been hit by a truck. Your limbs feel heavy. Your brain is in a fog.
So what does this all mean? Like, what is actually happening here? Why does answering emails in a new identity make us feel physically ill?
Because you are burning an astronomical amount of caloric energy building new neural pathways. When you live in your old identity, your brain operates on autopilot. It relies on heavily myelinated neural pathways that allow you to execute tasks with almost zero energy expenditure. But when you are building a new identity, setting new boundaries, pricing your work higher, suppressing the urge to people please, you are forcing your brain to carve entirely new roads through dense jungle.
That makes so much sense.
That cognitive friction requires massive amounts of glucose and oxygen. Your brain is literally exhausting your body's resources to physically restructure itself.
Which completely reframes how we view rest in this phase. Rest isn't just taking a nap because you lack discipline or you're being lazy.
Not at all. Rest in phase 4 is not an indulgence. It is biological integration.
Integration.
Yes. The brain needs silence and sleep to consolidate those new neural pathways and make them permanent. If you try to hustle culture your way through phase 4, if you drink 4 energy drinks and force yourself to keep grinding, you will completely burn out. And worse, you will lose the psychological progress you just fought for in the first 3 phases because the brain never had time to wire it in.
Which naturally bleeds into phase 5, a phase that the sources point out is absolutely terrifying for high achievers. Phase 5, recalibration in silence.
It is terrifying because you suddenly want to pull away from everything. You don't want to post on social media. You don't want to socialize. You don't want to network. You don't want to grind. You just want to sit in absolute silence.
For an ambitious person, this feels like a death sentence.
Yeah.
It feels like you've lost your mojo, your fire. You think, I'm depressed, I've given up.
But you haven't given up. You are acclimating to the new climate. You have shed the old skin, and the new skin is incredibly sensitive to external stimuli. You are undergoing a dopamine detox of sorts. You are pulling away from the noise of other people's opinions, strategies, and expectations to listen to the silence and find your own authentic next step. You have to learn how to walk in the new identity before you can run, and you cannot learn to walk if you are surrounded by noise.
It actually reminds me of a biological process, the snake molting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we always use this phrase, shedding our old skin, right? It's this beautiful, poetic metaphor for personal growth. But if you actually look at the biology of a snake molting, it is a brutal, intensely uncomfortable process. The old skin gets tight and itchy. It restricts their movement.
And crucially, their eyes cloud over. They experience temporary blindness because the old scale over the eye actually separates from the new one forming underneath. They literally cannot see where they are going.
Exactly. They're completely vulnerable, raw, and blind. They have to crawl under a rock and hide in the dark while it happens. They look dead to the outside world. But it is biologically mandated. If the snake tries to act tough, if it refuses to hide in the dark and go through that messy middle, it doesn't just stay the same size. The old skin literally chokes it. It suffocates and dies.
That is a visceral, perfect analogy for this process. The temporary blindness, the vulnerability, the desperate need to hide under a rock that is phase 5. You are recalibrating in silence. And the suffocation that is the split identity we talked about at the beginning. Staying in a life or a business size or a relationship dynamic that you have outgrown will eventually choke off your vitality.
So you wait in the dark. You let the new skin harden, and if you allow yourself that silence without panicking and running back to the old identity, you are rewarded with phase 6. Phase 6, crystal clear knowing.
The breakthrough.
Yes. It is described in the sources as this fleeting, beautiful phase where momentum just completely takes over. Suddenly, the path is entirely obvious. You don't doubt your decisions. You know exactly what email to send, what product to launch, what boundary to set. The friction just vanishes.
From a neurological standpoint, this is the flow state. The new neural pathways are finally myelinated. The new identity has successfully docked with your reality. Your brain is no longer fighting the change, it is executing it. It is a moment of pure, effortless alignment.
But the key word there is fleeting.
They're very fleeting.
Because right after that peak moment comes phase 7, reset. You hit the new level, you pop the champagne, you celebrate for about a week, and then the satisfaction starts to wane, and you immediately return to phase 1 for the next level of growth.
Because humans are evolutionarily designed to evolve. The hedonic treadmill ensures that the moment the new level becomes your normal baseline, your desire compass will recalibrate and point to the next horizon. The universe expands, and so do we, and the cycle begins all over again.
This entire 7-phase process. I won't bring up a specific concept Alexa used to describe the sheer awkwardness of this cycle, because it really normalizes the embarrassment of growth. She talks about the teenage moments of identity transformation.
Oh, yes.
The idea that stepping into a new identity requires a mandatory period of very awkward experimentation. She calls it the cringe before the crown.
It is a highly accurate psychological metaphor. When a child transitions into a teenager, they are leaving the identity of childhood, but they don't yet know who they are as an adult. They lack an internal anchor. So what do? They look outward for external clues. They try on identities like outfits.
Right. She talks about watching her own teenage daughter.
Yeah.
One week, the kid is wearing baggy hoodies and sweatpants, completely unbothered by the world. The next week, she comes down for breakfast in crop tops and massive fake eyelashes, driving her parents crazy.
Exactly.
She goes through a goth phase, a preppy phase, a rebel phase. She is trying to find the suit that fits.
And as adults scaling a business or trying to reinvent our personal lives, we do the exact same thing. We just disguise it a bit better.
Right.
We try on the highly polished, stoic professional phase. Then we pivot and try the hyper-vulnerable, oversharing internet personality phase. We try mimicking the exact cadence, the hand gestures, and the energy of a mentor we admire. And often, we watch our own videos back or we read the emails we just sent, and we feel a profound sense of cringe. We feel deeply embarrassed because we know it isn't authentic, it doesn't quite fit.
Like wearing your dad's oversized suit to middle school graduation. It's obvious to everyone that it's not yours. But her point is, you have to try on these poorly fitting versions of yourself until you find the elevated alignment that actually belongs to you. You cannot magically teleport from the old, comfortable you to the authentic, powerful new you. You have to walk through the valley of cringe.
The cringe is mandatory. If you try to skip the experimentation phase because you are too afraid of looking foolish or inauthentic, you will simply default back to the old safe identity. Perfectionism is just fear in a cheap tuxedo.
I love that.
You have to be willing to be a beginner at being yourself. You have to allow yourself to look a little ridiculous while you find your footing at the new level.
So to the listener, I want you to really absorb the gravity of this map. If your life feels utterly chaotic right now, if you are exhausted for no logical reason, if you are second-guessing everything while you are trying to reach a new goal, if you are currently hiding under a rock, feeling like you've lost your fire, you aren't failing.
No, you're not.
You are just molting. You are simply in phase 3 or phase 4 of the messy middle. It is supposed to feel this way. The chaos is not a stop sign. It is a checkpoint.
It is the biological and psychological cost of evolution. Your brain is trying to keep you safe, and you are trying to make yourself great. That conflict will always produce friction.
So, bringing all of this together, what Alexis Aranoja's philosophy is really teaching us is that true success, actual sustainable goal achievement, is not about finding the perfect productivity hack. It's not about deciphering a YouTube algorithm or figuring out the perfect sales funnel or optimizing your morning routine.
Those are just mechanics. They are tools. But a tool is useless if the person holding it is terrified of what will happen if it actually works.
Exactly. True success is about brutal, uncompromising self-honesty. It is about taking a hard look at your private life and aligning your personal boundaries with your public ambitions. You have to fix the split identity, because you cannot be a titan in the boardroom and a martyr at the kitchen table.
You really can't.
You have to raise your baseline, exposing your nervous system to the reality of your desires so you feel safe actually receiving what you're asking for. And above all, you have to have the courage to survive the chaotic, cringe-inducing, exhausting 7 phases of identity transformation without retreating to the safety of who you used to be.
It requires you to stop trying to change your circumstances and start allowing your circumstances to change you, to stop fighting the friction and start using it to carve the new pathways. And if we want to synthesize all of this into something truly actionable, something that cuts through all the theory, I want to leave you, the listener, with a deep, lingering question directly inspired by these sources.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about a goal you have been struggling to reach for years. A glass ceiling you cannot seem to break through no matter what strategy you use. Now, instead of asking what you are doing wrong, ask yourself this. Who did your current stuck identity protect in the past? What previous level of your life was this version of you built to survive?
Wow. What a massive shift in perspective.
Because that stuck identity isn't your enemy. It was your bodyguard. But the war is over. So the final question is, are you finally willing to thank that old version of you and let it retire?
That is the question, isn't it? Because until we realize that the murky, complex waters of our own psychology are what is blurring the X-ray, we can never truly heal the fracture. We just keep treating the symptoms with new strategies and new shiny objects. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take that question with you today, let it echo a bit in the silence of Phase 5, and we challenge you to step bravely into the cringe, the chaos, and the incredible clarity of your next level of identity. We'll see you next time.